welcome to the Valley Hoops Insider podcast, part of the Valley Hoops Insider website. We've got a bunch of guests with us today. We're talking about the Basketball Classic. It's a postseason basketball tournament. We'll break it all down for you in just a minute. Around the horn there, Marcus Wilson is with us, former Evansville great, SLU coach, played in Europe, businessman, all kinds of things going on for him. Rich Zvosec down there, former coach, author, read your book, outstanding. Really enjoyed that, Rich. And he's an actor. I don't know if you catch him on those commercials and all those kinds of things. He's a big deal. And then Greg Lansing, the former head coach at Indiana State, and you've coached around the country, Hall of Famer in the state of Iowa. And guys that I really respect and guys that I really enjoy hanging out with. So guys, appreciate you being with us today. And we're talking about the Basketball Classic. And I want to go to you, Rich, first. You're kind of on the executive committee of these things. There's been a name change. This is, I think, the former College Insider Tournament. Am I correct? And if so, why the name change? What's behind kind of all that? I should say that all three of these guys are on here because they're all part of the committee that selects teams and those kinds of things for the tournament. But Rich, why the name change and what's behind all of this?
So a couple of reasons. You are correct, though. It used to be the College Insider Tournament, started by Joe Dwyer and Angela Lento. Basically, it was named College Insider Tournament because the website was collegeinsider.com. Because of COVID, the tournament was canceled the last couple of years. So just to try and reintroduce, rebrand the tournament, the name was changed. Basically, the way it'll operate financially will change, and it's also part of a bigger picture fundraising mechanism, social justice awareness program called Racism, to kind of garner interest for that. But long story short, really was changed just as kind of a reintroduction, a rebranding of the tournament. But the mission stays the same. It's for, primarily mid-major teams who may get overlooked in the NCAA tournament or the NIT tournament. And I know, Greg, you had a team in the CIT a number of times when you were at Indiana State.
Yeah, we hosted Robert Morris once. And they got that tournament in the CBI, the two couple different ones they had, and now with us, with our group, the Racism, doing that. And obviously, I was a mid-major. I was at Iowa, but I was at a mid-major school. I think this one's going to really be fun and exciting, and a great one to get started.
And the CBI tournament, I think, is still around, and maybe the Vegas one. Marcus, is there a difference between these tournaments? What distinguishes the Basketball Classic? Not just, we're going to get to the social fabric of it in a minute, but from the basketball side, is there something different about the makeup of the team?
No, in my opinion, I think it's a lot of the differences are on the social side. So one thing I would think it's some of the initiatives of the races last week. The secret T-shirt that colleges have been wearing is a part of the racism, and so there was great momentum this year with that. With so many schools participating, it was a very timely name change to ride that momentum and bring that to what was formerly the CIT and now the Basketball Classic. But I think in terms of actual play, I think that, we'll be competing for the same teams. I do think because of the initiatives and the other in-depth things that racism is trying to accomplish, that I think that we will get some of the teams that they're teeter-tottering, like, hey, should I go to the CBI, CIT? Personally, a couple of coaches I've talked to out in the West Coast and Midwest and some of the conferences say, I love what you all are doing. If we have the choice, we'll go with you all. A lot of times those schools they can kind of verbally commit now, but they're still hoping to win their conference tournament. They're still hoping they sneak into the NIT. But if they don't, then it would be us or the CBI. And because we have more, I'm not trying to talk bad about any other tournament, but because of some of the initiatives that we're doing in terms of bringing some light to the game is no secret. Some of the initiatives to try to help minority coaches and some of the other things that we're doing and having awards for all divisions of basketball. I think people like that we're trying to bring more exposure to more people, and therefore we might end up with some of those teams that were teeter-tottering on what they should choose to do.
And Rich, I've talked to some administrators and some coaches in the past and they talked about postseason tournaments actually costing them money. It made it hard for them to do the postseason tournament. Sometimes they would opt to not play. There's something different about the Basketball Classic, taking the receipts, maybe paying the bills. Can you give us a little bit of the difference of the financial layout?
So in a nutshell, it's, if you go to the CBI or the CIT in the past, if you hosted a game, basically there was a hosting fee. And what would happen is that hosting fee would go into a pot and it would cover the cost for a team that went on the road and for the administration of the tournament. In rebranding it, restarting it, we gave it some thought about how can we do this. And the model's changed in the sense that instead of a team having to come up with a set dollar amount, there's going to be a negotiation to basically, take the gate from ticket sales. So in essence, a team is not paying to play, which, again, has in the past with some teams, they didn't want to play because they didn't want to host, and they didn't want to go on the road, so they couldn't afford it necessarily. Now there's a mechanism where a team can do that and still host a game.
And Greg, when you were coaching at Indiana State, everybody wants to be in the NCAA tournament, or if not that, they want to be in the NIT. Those are the famous ones. But there's a value, isn't there, to postseason basketball for any college basketball team, but particularly a mid-major team trying to grow their program and get some experience.
Oh, there's no question, and it's the Power Fives are taking over a little bit. The NIT's changed a little bit with if you win your regular season championship and don't win the tournament, you get that automatic invite. We went to NCAA tournament, then back-to-back NITs through my first 4 years when I was at Indiana State. And the second one, when we played at Arkansas, we were the only at-large mid-major team in the tournament. So we want to change that and give these others some opportunities. And when I was in Indiana State, we couldn't afford it. We did it the first year, the one time, but then after that, it wasn't even a possibility. And the way we're making the changes is really beneficial. And Porter's a good friend of mine. They made that run and won a tournament in the postseason. And then the next year, it really propelled them to where Loyola is right now. They have those championship teams in a run. And I think anytime you get a chance to keep playing and play for another championship, it can only be a benefit to your program.
And Marcus, you were not at Evansville at this time, but they won the CIT a number of years ago. I went to a bunch of those games. I was at the championship game at the Ford Center when they won it. But Greg, to your point too, Wichita State too, they had maybe it was the NIT, it was some postseason tournament that they really got hot. And then after that, they became that NCAA tournament that was a team that was awfully good. From a player's standpoint, Marcus, what's it like? Is tournament basketball no matter where you're playing it?
Well, I think everybody's goal right now is to get to the NCAA tournament, right? And then there's no question about that. I grew up wanting to be on one shining moment. But then after that, these other coaches can tell you, I think anytime that you can win a championship, whether that's a conference championship, whether that's a preseason championship in Nassau, Bahamas, whether that's the CIT or CBI, especially in the postseason, it gives your players another opportunity to strive for a goal. You get a little bit more time to work with them. You also, if you do well, you can utilize that in recruiting. You get far enough and you're on TV or, maybe ESPN Plus, you can use that in recruiting as well and tell some of the guys you're recruiting, hey, look at us, we're in this postseason tournament. We have a championship. And so anytime you can win a championship, whether it's preseason, conference, or postseason, I think that it's always going to be beneficial to your program.
Eracismforever.com is the website, and Eracism is kind of the organization somewhat behind this basketball tournament, the Basketball Classic. These guys are on the committee helping pick teams and helping run some things. Rich, or any of you really, talk about this, the social component. We are in such a time, it's so important for us to address things. Marcus and I have been on a couple of podcasts together talking about some of these issues, but how important is it for basketball in particular to kind of take a lead in some of these conversations?
Oh, it's very important. Sports is a microcosm of society, and when you look at some of the changes that have happened through the course of history in society, many times it has started on the playing surface, whether it's basketball court or a football field or a baseball diamond. And the one thing I think that Joe Dwyer and Angelo Lento were kind of ahead of the curve. You go back, they had started the John McClendon Classic. They came up with the idea of this game is no secret, 2 or 3 years ago. And really we're on the forefront of pushing things. And, this is just one more step to increase the awareness and increase the contribution moving forward. So I think, what you'll see is a number of different ideas, things moving forward as part of racism.
And I'll add to that, Harry. I was coaching at Indiana State during the time not only COVID, but when George Floyd and his tragic death, really came to the forefront, and I enjoyed our team meetings at that time as much as I've ever enjoyed anything. I'm telling you, these young men that we had on our team, just so intelligent and so thoughtful and so caring, and they educated me every bit as much as I've ever done anything for them. And we made it a point to continue to have the talks throughout the time we were there. And I just, again, what Coach just said with the work that Joe Dwyer and Angela Lento have done, being on this committee and the board of Eracism means as much to me as anything we've done.
Marcus, you and I were on a couple of podcasts together, and we talked about some of the points that eracismforever.com has on their side about listening, learning, education, those kinds of things. It's those conversations Greg was just talking about that are so vital to us moving forward as individuals and as a community and as a basketball community.
Yeah, and I think I got started with the racism because of Greg Lansing. So I was doing my media work through the Valley. He was at Arch Madness, and everybody else was asking questions about the game. And I knew I had seen some of the videos of those conversations that he just spoke of. So I asked him about it. Really respected that he had those type of conversations with his team. Angela Lento heard that question in the media day, called me, want to be involved. And I said, there's two things I love is basketball, helping kids through sports, and then also, bringing equity to situations. And so once they started telling me about the initiatives of Eracism and trying to help bring some equity in some situations, trying to bring light to this, and to be honest, there's something about when you have a coach, I don't care if that coach is white or black. I know Conzo Martin was doing it. I saw, Greg Lansing doing it. But when you have a leader of men talking to their kids about something outside of basketball, as a young man, that's as a parent, that's where I want to send my kid. I want somebody to continue the extension of values that I have in my home. And I thought, guys that were having those conversations were doing that. And then, I used to work at the YMCA. So then it was another part of it where the game is no secret occurred in 1944 between an all-black team and Duke. And it happened at a YMCA because no one would allow those, for black and white people to come together. And so when I found out it happened at a YMCA, and then I also found out about why they did it and how they had to keep it a secret for the next 18 years, it just reminds me of how powerful this game of basketball is, right? I mean, how awesome is this game that it was bringing people together before even laws made it possible for us to come together because of that brown ball, right? And so when I heard the story, it touched me. I felt like, I want to get behind this. And I think there's so many. That's why I said, like, I think when people start finding out why we're doing this and the initiatives behind it, when they're making a decision on what tournament they want to go to, I think we just have a lot of substance behind it.
I watched the Loyola Project movie the other day. I don't know if any of you guys have been able to see that movie yet, the documentary. So well done. And I was shocked, not shocked, I guess. I just didn't know that Jerry Harkness had been befriended by Jackie Robinson before all that stuff got going. Jackie Robinson said, "Hey, you're not too bad at basketball. You ought to do this." And the power of those words catapulted the guy into what he became, basketball wise anyway. I thought that was fascinating part of that story. And you said it so well, Marcus. I think whenever anybody can speak, I don't know, encouragement, life, et cetera, leaders can speak into other people's lives. It's such a profound thing. When we think about all of these things wrapped together, and we're coming back to the basketball classic now, is this a mid-major tournament, Rich, or might we see Oklahoma State?
Well, it was started with the idea that it would be a mid-major tournament. What we've resisted, unlike some other tournaments, is taking I don't know, I'll use Oklahoma State since you brought them up. I don't even know what their record is right now, so I apologize. But we'll just say they're a 500 team. Taking a 500 Oklahoma State, or West Virginia actually a couple years ago went to the CBI and they were like 3 or 4 games under 500. The whole purpose is, you have teams that don't win their conference tournament and are deserving of an at-large bid. But as we've seen, they expanded the field, but it hasn't necessarily benefited mid-major teams. It's just been more at-large bids for the Big Ten or the ACC. And so that was the whole thrust of it, to give teams that, they've had a great year. You're trying to reward kids for having a great year, and that maybe they stumbled in their conference tournament and didn't have those 3 great days in March, which, Greg and I can appreciate that, and Marcus as well as a player. You can win the regular season, you can have a great year, but if you don't win that tournament, there's a good chance you're not getting in. And so, and it really hit home a few years ago. Keith Dambrot's a friend of mine. He was the head coach at Akron at the time, and they went like 26-5 or 26-6. They didn't get an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament. And I look at the NIT bracket, and Akron's not in the NIT bracket. And I called Keith. I said, "Keith, did you guys turn the NIT down?" And he said, "No, we didn't get a bid." And to me, that's a travesty that a team that good would be sitting home. So that was the whole impetus of the beginning of the tournament. And, that's what we're going to try and continue to do.